Another Logic tip, trick, hack, workflow improvement, technique, whatever you want to call it. Just fun stuff in Logic. Now, on a lot of these videos that I make this caveat of, and this is how you do it in Logic, but you could probably do this in whatever DAW you're in. But what I want to show you today is really only about Logic. It may open your awareness of what's out there, and perhaps your DAW has something like this that you can take advantage of. But this is almost all Logic, and it's actually pretty exciting. Let's get into it. So we all know about drum replacement, and that's what this video is about. It's about replacing your drum. Now, when people replace drums, really what they're talking about is enhancing the drums that are there. I haven't seen anyone take a live drum kit and just completely swap out the snare drum with another snare drum. With kick drum, you may do that, but you would have to have a really badly recorded kick drum to do that. It's more, to me, about enhancement. It's about getting something that you're not getting from the recorded track. See, whether it's more snap, more attack, more punch, whatever. I have this tune right here. Let me just play you the drums the way I have them mixed at the moment. Okay, so you hear it, it's kind of big and boomy and roomy, and it doesn't sound that bad. It actually sounds pretty good, but the kick is just not doing what I want. It's hard to put my finger on it, but it's just not hitting in the right places. So I did a lot of EQing to the kick in and the kick out. Let me leave the kick out of the mix for a second, and let's just listen to the kick in for a second. So, I don't know, there's something about it. It's almost like the mic might have been a little too close and there's just not a lot of body, and then the out mic is just a little floppy and doesn't have a ton of definition, which is normal. That's often the case. So this is a good candidate for drum replacing. So since I basically wanted to replace the kick out, I took that track and I moved it down here. And you're like, but wait, if you moved it down here, why are the waveforms so different? Well, I did actually change the gain, and I believe I did that just so when it went into trigger, it would trigger the notes better. Although you can see I did turn up the volume all the way. So I don't know. I had a reason for doing it, and who knows why I did it. Now, this video is not about trigger because I just couldn't get trigger to do what I wanted. Not because trigger can't do it, but just because I'm not super adept at it. I have all these packs, the Trigger 2 library and the CLA stuff, and I just never really know what they are. They just say the names of them, but I find it hard to audition stuff and get what I wanted. I know that a lot of people who do this, they just have a kick and a snare that they use on everything because it works, or maybe they just have one or two, but I'm not really at that stage. So I ended up not using the kick from trigger. I ended up not using trigger at all. So what I did decide to do is, well, let me use Logic has its own version of this. And it's really good, but it also has its pitfalls. You can't see it, but when you go up to the track menu in the main menu, there's an option. I think you could see just a little of it. It says replace or double drum track, okay? Or it's Control D. And when you open this, the library opens and you get this dialogue. Right away, there's a couple things you have to know. First of all, you need to see your drum track a little better. So we need to move this around. I'm going to have to just close this, even though it is something we're going to use later. Get it to a size that you can work with. This is good for now. You might want to look at the whole track. The one thing I will say that's good about this is at least when this menu pops up, you can actually go back here and do stuff. Sometimes when a menu like this pops up, you're kind of stuck in this mode. And I'm actually curious what that's called if you're a designer of software, what you would call this. It's not a floating window. I guess it is like a floating window, but usually these dialogues kind of take control. It's kind of interesting that you have a little bit of control in this one. Anyhow, I'm rambling. So we are dealing with a kick. You would change this to kick. We're going to put it on kick, doubling it or replacing it. I think the only difference with that is if you say replacement, it might get rid of the original track that you had. It doesn't change and anything else besides that. It just means we'll get rid of we'll hide it, we'll mute it or something. I'll probably just mute it. I don't know, I've never used it. So then all this, I just kind of leave the same. But what you'll notice now is as soon as I made that selection, it created this MIDI track. See this? It created an instrument and a MIDI track. If we zoom in a little bit, we can see that it made one for each kick pretty easy to detect, right? There's not a ton going on here. You may actually go, oh wait, but are these kicks? They look like they're tom hits. So just from the default, I think Logic did a good job of detecting where the drum hits are. But you also have this threshold, and you adjust this, and you see as you come down, more and more stuff comes in, and as you come up, less and less stuff comes in. I think it was around here. I have no reason to not be happy with that. So then you say, okay, now this is also one of the pitfalls or the problems with this method is once you say okay, you have this track, you have this MIDI track, you have this MIDI information. You can't really do anything else with it in regards to the original track. So we're going to say, okay, it made a track and it looks good. So now we just have to find a sound for it. Now, if you've watched any of my other videos, you know I have this big issue with tracks and where it puts them and what kind of routing it sets up for them. And this is one of those things where I was on this track, if you remember, and I made this track, and look, it puts it on going to bus 15, which actually is this drum track, but I'm wondering why didn't it just put it to the same one as that this kick was going to, which is actually bus 1. So that's just something you need to pay attention to. Also, I had already done this on this track and then I erased it to make the video and do it again. But the first time I did it, it actually didn't just change this to 15. It also changed the original track to output bus 15. So it's something you need to kind of pay attention to. If you don't have a complicated routing system like I do in this mix template, I wouldn't worry about it, but just pay attention to that. So now we have our kick track. Let's just solo this one and solo this one. Okay, so as far as how do you replace drums in Logic, that's it. We just replaced a drum. Now let's keep this open because, okay, so now we have this. And what's great about this is it's a MIDI file. So we can go through it, we can edit it, we can copy it. There's just so much stuff that we could do. If we don't like if one of the hits is extra, we could just go like that and mute it or erase it totally, or copy it to, we could copy this to a whole bunch of different tracks. We could have a Lynn kick drum or an 808 or really anything. But what does Logic default us to? It has its own acoustic drum kits, kick drums, acoustic kicks. But it has electronic ones. Then it has layer ones, which are pretty good. Didn't I say I felt like this was missing body? So maybe we could try this one, right? Okay, that's an option. Or we could do this one. That's if you don't feel it's poking through enough. Maybe if it was a kick, maybe if the outside kick was better, this might be the way to go. So I don't usually do it like this, but it's always good to know that it's there. And then, as I said, we could put this kind of drum as well. Right? That's interesting. Gives you some pretty cool options. Now, I will say that between this and Trigger, this is, I don't know, I think it's a little cooler. I know what Trigger is going for because it's trying to give you, this is the overhead mic, and this is the room mic, and this is already, some of them are pre-mixed to really pop, like how they would be on a finished record. But what I like about this is it's just easier to jump around and try different things. Okay, now suppose you like that one, then you could just come over here and look. We can tune it, and we can do all this. This is a really, really powerful sampler. That's where we're at. But as good as that is, I don't like to use these that much. And in this example, they actually worked out really, really great. But what I think this needs is something from my own library. The problem is I don't have my own library set up like this with acoustic kicks 1 through 20 and these fix-it element kicks. I just have different samples that are playing kick. In the next part, I want to show you how I create EXS, no one calls it EXS, sampler instruments from what I have. So that's in part 2, coming up now.